Welcome to the third webinar as part of Talon's SharePoint Strategy Series. In the first two webinars, we covered information architecture, community design within the SharePoint context. Today, we are going to focus a little more on findability and search within SharePoint context. Very quick high-level overview for today's agenda. First of all, we will review sort of some of the basic design principles, the motivations for creating an intranet or intranet portal that is findable by design. So what we want to do is articulate why it's important to bake in information architecture in search and findability in terms of information content structure, and make sure that we stay very user-centric and user-focused early on in the information architecture design phase. We're very quickly moving to how to actually improve the search experience within SharePoint by offering some practical tips and really using a real-world demo to illustrate some of the best practices when you're thinking about approaching how to structure the SharePoint search experience. We will discuss also some of the customizations that will be required to implement a design in the real world using either out-of-box SharePoint capability, very simple, I will call it, free or simple enhancements that are available free of charge on the internet today, and also more expensive, some of the third-party add-ons and extensions that you can purchase to enhance your search experience. So very quick introduction to myself. If you have not attended the previous two webinars, I am currently a director at Talon, but previously I've worked with SharePoint since 2001, and spending in my past, I would say 9 years, I've delivered portal implementations for about 25 implementation engagements. So come with that. I have spent really a lot of time focused on information architecture, not just from the technical delivery perspective, but the overall portal strategy. And what I want to do is really today share with you some of the experiences and best practices we have learned from years of field experience. So a lot of times when you're starting out, your intranet redesign project, or if you are planning a brand new portal, we often start our portal design with user research and trying to understand what are the key motivators or the user complaints around the existing intranets. And one of the most frequent complaints we hear from the user is that the portal simply displays so much information. And this is typically because especially on large enterprises, portal evolve over time, content gets aggregated over time, and then what happens is that over the years, so much information is added to a portal, it becomes simply unmanageable. So what we find is that most users find the majority of portals that have been implemented to be relatively cumbersome in terms of finding information. If we were to take a step back and look at what are the key motivators or the needs, the user needs, from an employee perspective, in our field research, we often hear is that there's some common themes, right? Number one, the users want to be able to accomplish the activity very quickly, so they don't really see the portal as a as a place where they come and hang out. They really feel that the portals is a tool to very quickly get to the information that they need, and they want to be able to do that as efficiently as fast as possible, and then go about their normal daily tasks. So some of the common themes that we hear is that I want to be able to access my expenses or time reporting or HR forms very quickly. Some of the other key themes we find is I want to be able to find contact information, other experts within the company who can help me get something done, and also basically looking for information that is localized and personalized to their needs. At the end of the day, if we were to kind of try to extract a theme from the corporate portal user, we see that initially most users want, the way they articulate their needs is that they want a portal that's as easy to use as a website they use every day. Now, if we were to match that up against their actual motivations and what they have told us over the years, what they want out of a portal, we find that we can modify this sort of mission statement and write in a slightly different way, which is to make the portal as efficient to use as the websites they use every day. And what that really refer to when the folks are really, giving us this feedback, they're really comparing the portal to, the sites they visit, during their lunchtime or to make their holiday shopping. These are the consumer-facing sites that folks use every day. So what we want to do is to take a theme from that says, first of all, we want to create an intranet portal as efficient as possible. And we can do that by looking at some of the most popular websites that on the internet today that the user are very familiar with, that have a very high engagement to the end user population. And we find that there's a couple of themes that we can derive, right? There are really three core guiding principles we can derive from our user research. Number one is we want to make finding things fast. And that becomes sort of a consistent theme in your portal design is what are some of the tools and techniques you can use to structure information, and more importantly, to surface that information to make finding things really, really fast and really, really easy. The second guiding principle is that we want to make that a personalized experience so that it's contextual to what the user is doing on the site. And typically you see that exposed in consumer websites like Amazon, for example. They will make recommendations to you based on your past purchase behavioral patterns. LinkedIn, very similar. If you're subscribed to lots of different topics, their newsfeed is absolutely tailored to the topics that you have signaled in LinkedIn that I'm interested in this type of topics or discussions or news. And then finally, content is really the king, right? Within a portal environment, content is currency. And the term currency means a couple of things. Number one is currency is value of the portal, which means we want to really highlight the content. The navigation structure of the site exists to expose content. So what we want is to create a design that highlights the content and also make the freshest content available at all times. What we want to do is really de-emphasize, for example, a piece of content that has been uploaded for, 4 or 5 years ago. No one's really, clicked on it, want to kind of really, either archive that and get that out of the portal or really, bury it in the, 18th page of the search experience and tune the relevancy so that the freshest content is delivered to the user at all possible times. So, if we were to, synthesize our design principles into an information architecture design, and this is relevant to the previous 2 webinars as well, there's a consistent theme we want to attack here. Number one is we really want to develop a user-centric structure, meaning that the entry point to the portal, we want to make sure that it, it's optimized for the key top user activities. So during user research, if you find that most employees are here to access a form, then what we want to do is make sure that those forms that the folks are most interested in is 1 click away, right? It's never more than it's 1 or 2 clicks away. And what you also want to do is provide a lot of helpful quick links to the user so that they can get to it very quickly. So if we were to sort of move forward, and how would you actually create a user-centric design, we find that there's actually a number of things that are common usability design patterns. And let's address those, cover those very quickly, and then move into how would you actually implement this within SharePoint. So before I get started on the actual tips and design samples, I'm going to launch a very quick poll for this group here. And if you can just, very quickly give us some feedback on where you are today, right? What technology are you currently using for enterprise search? And the majority of users, based on the answer we see, is that a big portion of the users are using 2010, which is great because all of the demos today are done using SharePoint 2010. And there are also folks that are not using any enterprise search, and which will be also very good because we're going to showcase what's actually available out of SharePoint straight out of the box. So while the poll's coming in, thank you everyone for answering the poll. Let's go into first, before we dive into technology, what are the key themes we want to do when we're designing SharePoint search? So the first tip that I want to give is that there's really two ways that a portal user interacts with the portal when they're thinking about how do I actually find information. Traditionally, they're called, there's two approaches. One, browse, right? I want to be able to browse very quickly through the portal through some sort of global navigation structure and find the information or the people, the documents, the news article that I'm looking for, or the form. And so the first user experience metaphor is actually the browse experience. And so, and typically most portals have some sort of a search box, right? Let it be, in this particular design, this client, we decided to put the search, very Google-oriented. When you hit the portal homepage, there's a news feed, but right in the big middle center is the, here's the search box. And that's a very, I would say, an appropriate design for a company that wants to maximize its user efficiency, and we want to highlight search as the key way to interact with the portal. That may not be the appropriate design for many portals. So I'll give you another example of what other landing pages could look like. But the key is that, first of all, we want to make sure that in order for search and the top-level navigation to be maintainable, most portals take the approach of a hard-coded set of links, right? So, for example, you may have regional offices, and those offices are actually hard-coded using a set of, even if you implement a mega menu, it's typically managed in a content management system or a static link list. The key I want to emphasize here is that the issue with that particular approach is just simply maintainability of the navigational structure. Another way to do that is to use the SharePoint metadata management system, which gives you a taxonomy-based driven approach to managing navigation. And this is the common approach used by most large internet sites. If you visit, Amazon, if you visit eBay, Best Buy, and the large e-commerce sites, they all use what we call the search-driven navigation that is powered by metadata as opposed to a static set of links for very good reasons. The first reason is simply data maintainability. Most of these e-commerce sites, they have tens of items that they are selling. If I extend that to the internet portal, over time, your portal has already grown or will grow to a large scale, which means instead of selling products, you're really selling content. So if you take it from that perspective, what you want to do is that content to grow in a graceful manner and to be organized, the information architecture to evolve over time so that you're not manually labeling and tagging and maintaining this. So the way to make your content, corporate content, very accessible is to use the metadata structure, and that's using the out-of-box SharePoint 2010 metadata manager, creating a business taxonomy so that as you're uploading each type of content, it's either automatically tagged or the user can tag it in a certain manner. And what that really means is your search can then be directly powered by the metadata, and you do not need to actually maintain that metadata other than maintaining the taxonomy itself. So you need to maintain taxonomy, but you do not need to maintain the actual links on the navigational structure. So what I'm showing you here is a fairly classic design of if you were to want to find information, let's say this is an employee base. For this particular case, this client has about 4,500 employees global-wide, but their business structure and they're constantly acquiring and divesting companies. So it made it really important not to hard code these offices or locations or even the business functions so that it's completely tied to the organizational structure. What we want to do is make that flexible using the metadata system. So this is an example of a search-driven navigation structure, and the best examples, if you compare this to the popular modern internet sites, and you see that used everywhere, right? It's used in CNN for organizing content. It's used for, in Amazon for organizing product categories. And so this particular UX metaphor is very appropriate for organizing large volume content. And the users are also very familiar with this, right? Because they've done e-commerce on the internet, and so this should be very familiar to them. So our first tip is to create a search-driven navigational structure, and either encapsulate it in the home page, in the content area, or in what we call a mega menu or super menu that can basically pop down or pop up and give you additional kind of breakdowns. One of the key challenges you're going to see is that there may be your information architecture may exceed the real estate. So what I show here is that we can only show the most frequent locations, or the top 5 most accessed locations. The more structure in that case, then when you click on it, it will bring out secondary navigation that shows you the entire office list. This is another example of a search-driven navigation. Again, we're using the similar search-driven navigational architecture. We're using a slightly different mega menu design. But again, this is a very similar design to the previous slide. I want to show you another example of a search-driven navigational structure. The second thing we want to do is really focus on how do we make these search results simple and useful for end users. First of all, if you look at this particular design compared to the out-of-box SharePoint, it really cleans things up. If you look at the out-of-box SharePoint design, it's actually quite good, right? It's got a list of navigational search results, and there's a lot of metadata around it. But what we have done here is two things. Number one is we have maintained the core search results, display, but we have changed the font size and the visualization so that we are highlighting the content. The most important part is to really make your content pop. And by doing that, we are, reinforcing the fact that the content is king, and we want to make a large list of results very easy to scan by the human eye. So as you can see here, we have increased the font size of the document headings. We also provided document preview capability, so the user can have a very quick peek into what does that document look like, what does the first page or multiple pages look like. And we also provide the user some additional information, such as the ratings, right? How many times has this document has been voted up or down? All the comments relating to this asset. And finally, the actual details. If you click on the view details, it actually takes you, it's another navigator that shows you some of the comments and the ratings that the users have provided. So while I'm doing the demo, I'm going to switch over to my Internet Explorer browser. This is actually implementation within the SharePoint 2010 environment. So as you can see here, we have customized the search results. We have the ratings menu that has been implemented. And all of this is done using SharePoint XSLT against the core search results web part. So this is done using out of SharePoint experience. We did not write any custom code. And on the left-hand side, we also have the search navigators, which give some additional filter criteria. So for example, we have tagged certain documents specifically for SharePoint architecture. If I do that, it will be able to filter the search results down just for this document who has been tagged appropriately. So the key here is that we really haven't done a whole lot other than I would say consolidate, simplify the search results. And the good news is that you can actually do that just using out-of-box SharePoint capability. An additional tip we want to kind of articulate here is, when you're organizing your search results, SharePoint out of box has filter capabilities, what we call search refinement. That is built in to SharePoint. However, the refinement needs to be set up so that it's listing, for example, your metadata. Again, the navigators are are going to be powered by the SharePoint metadata capability that's going to allow you to define the business taxonomy in order to refine your search results. Additional, some of the most common refinement navigators is, being able to filter a set of documents by range. For example, this is appropriate for if you're searching for a press release and say, I want to see the second quarter of last year's press releases, or you're looking for a set of documents within a certain date range. It's very helpful to have the search navigators on the left-hand side. Some of the other customizations that we're doing for this particular client is that because the search navigators run on the left-hand side, we felt like we want to anchor the user results using a super breadcrumb. The super breadcrumb allows you to navigate within any of the hierarchy, the metadata hierarchy, very quickly. And this is another way to not show the end user at what level of the navigation you're in terms of the search filtering, but also very quickly to switch the depth of the search filtering. And the reason we want to do that is for this particular client, they have over, I think, 12,000 policy documents organized by different industries and sectors. They're in the insurance business. So there's a lot of guidelines and policies when you're underwriting a particular type of business. So we want the end user to be able to very quickly navigate this, what we call the knowledge bank, using these search refiners, but more importantly, be able to do a very quick deep dive and also pop out, right? So the breadcrumbs serve not only as state management of showing the end users where you are, right, in the navigational structure, but also search as a very quick way to actually navigate within the different levels of the hierarchy. Some of the other customizations we always recommend our clients to think about is, how do you quickly create a scannable people search? Almost all internet portals have some sort of people directory or contact directory. And that's one of the key functions that portal, provides to the employee base, especially if you have folks, kind of scatter all over the world. You want to be very quickly find their contact information. So one of the key customization we want to do is, show the contact information very quickly, so that you don't actually have to click on the contact details. And we also want to be able to scan the people search results very quickly. Again, if we take the same design metaphor, it's a matter of changing the visual style so that it's very easy to scan people's names, because this is the most important piece of information. We want to kind of make that a little bit, that stands out a little more. Some of the other capabilities we provided is be able to, have, let it be Skype or link integration, so that you can immediately, if you see that they're, online, start a chat or email them directly. So these are some of the most, small touch-ups that can make your search experience much more, pleasurable to use for the end user, because they can just get the information they need very quickly. And then finally, another, as you're thinking about search design, a document preview capability is often quite helpful, especially if your search results have not been tuned to the point where it serves up it's very targeted or it's super relevant every time you do a search. So what you want to do is give the users a very quick way to preview this document and see if this is the right information they're looking for before they actually click on the actual link, which will actually initiate download, or which could be a very large document. So the preview capability is offered not out of the native SharePoint 2010 solution, but there's a additional add-on called Fast search for SharePoint that can offer you document preview for Office documents. Now, the issue with SharePoint Fast Search for SharePoint is that they do not support document preview for PDF documents. So one of the third-party solutions that you can purchase is called Untitled Chapter, which supports not only all the Word, PowerPoint, the Office document formats, they also support PDFs, images, TIFF files, and I believe they support over 100 document preview formats. And so that's another third-party tool that you can consider as an add-on, right, to the out-of-box SharePoint capability to offer that document preview. And so what we have done here is simply, do some minimal customization to the preview capability. But other than some, cascading style sheet updates, this is out-of-box in terms of provided by FAST for SharePoint. Another way to think about how do you deliver information that's current, right, what we call really is through content feeds. So most companies have some sort of a news feed or a news landing page. That can also be powered by search. There's really two ways to create news and news framework for Internet portals. One is using within SharePoint, you can use a content query web part that effectively queries a site collection, and you can sort it by most recently viewed. That's one way of doing it. We find that it's actually quite easier. It's also just as powerful to create to provide that news landing page using the search feeds. For every type of search that you can execute, there's the RSS feed capability that SharePoint provides right out of the box. Now, the reason why we want to use search to power your news landing page is there's a couple of good architectural advantages to doing that. The number one is search is very, very powerful, and it's very, very fast because everything is indexed inside, it's organized for fast information retrieval. So if you have a site collection with, say, thousands and thousands of content articles spread out over lots of sites and lots of site collections, the SharePoint content query web part executes the SQL query, and the retrieval time could be very long depending on your information architecture. That is almost never the case if you use a search-powered newsfeed. Search, by definition, is designed for fast information access. So we find that from an architectural scalability perspective, if we use search to power your news feeds, it's actually much more scalable and has less dependency on where the content is, whether it's news content that's internal to the portal, or in most of our clients' cases, a lot of those content actually lives outside of the portal. So by using a search feed, we can unify both internal content and external content and aggregate all of that information into a single feed. That's a much more powerful design, especially if you have a lot of hybrid data sources, right? Let it be you're sourcing information from LexisNexis or external SharePoint sites. So as you're approaching your sort of news design, really, consider there's really two ways to do the news feed. One is through traditional content query web parts. Another way is to use the SharePoint search architecture and then providing a feed from a specific customized search. And finally, we want to really think about how do we make the content actually accessible to all of the end users that are not native English speakers. And so internationalization and globalization is almost always a desired feature. However, there's always compliance issues. For example, we often hear from clients, number one objection to using any type of automated translation capability is accuracy of the content, right? Is the translation accurate enough to be useful? The second type of objection is, this is information that that if you want to maintain using manual translation, it will add a humongous amount of work to your internet content management team. And simply, almost not very feasible for most corporate intranet content to be manually translated, just given the amount of volume and the cost associated with manual translation. So to address that, there's a couple of approaches. The first approach is integrating a tool like Microsoft Translator so that you can provide a translation widget for your global users. And you want to do that for two reasons. Most non-native speakers, they are still comfortable, even though they do speak English, because it's a second language. It's not necessarily the language they use every day. It's simply much better for them to be able to very quickly scan the document using even if it's not a perfect translation, to be able to switch to another language and take a look at the content very quickly. It just makes the information that much more consumable. So the implementation approach for this type of capability, there's really right now on the market, they're both free. It's the Google Translator and also the Microsoft Translator. Now, for SharePoint-based implementations, I will almost always recommend the Microsoft Translation tool. The Microsoft Translator widget is simply an jQuery widget that you include on your website, and it's self-contained, right? So it's a software as a service architecture, and so as long as you include an HTML snippet on your page, it will do automatic content translation. So let's see. I'm going to do a very quick demo. And this is a very typical use case, right? This is a SharePoint-based portal, and you can, and if we designed the news article, so the native language is in English. You can translate this to one of the 32 languages. I will pick German for now. And the Microsoft Translator will do a dynamic translation. What it's doing right now is that it's taking all of the page content and calling the Bing translation service over the internet and translating content. Now, the quality of the translation is going to both vary by language, the content itself, but what we find is that the publicly available internet translation technology have improved to such point that they're within the 90 to 95% translation accuracy compared to, if you hire a professional translator. So it's not perfect, but it gets you close enough where this information becomes much more consumable. And because this is a free service, the cost of integrating this capability is quite low. So for a lot of our global clients, we actually, recommend that you bake this into your portal design. And so this is a very slick way to get some, I call it low-cost, poor man's solution if you don't have the bandwidth to actually translate a massive amount of content. So as I was going through those last 7 tips on how you structure search and how you design for maximum searchability and findability within SharePoint, let's very quickly discuss what's out of the box capable versus what third-party software you had to purchase. First of all, the good news is that the top 5 tips we have for search, for a great search experience, can be supported straight out of SharePoint. And let me kind of quantify what is native SharePoint. By native SharePoint, I mean you are not writing C# code or custom web parts in order to customize the search experience. Everything I've shown you here in terms of search-driven navigation, simple and customizing a search results look and feel, adding additional fields and expose that through search, refinement, and creating content feeds through search is all out of box from SharePoint, but you do need to do customization within the SharePoint context. And that means using either SharePoint Designer or writing custom XSLT and pass that to the search results web parts. So that's all considered, I would say, code-less SharePoint customization. That doesn't mean that it's easy. And it just means that you can do that without necessarily going through the traditional software development process, because it is a supported customization path out of box with SharePoint. How fast you can do that, and just to give you an example, is the search experience I've shown you, and this is the one that I'm referring to. This particular search experience took us about a month to customize the XSLT, to set up the business taxonomy, to set up the metadata structure, and to customize the really, both the search results web part and the actual search box web part. So the overall, it's taken us about, a week with a team of one information architect and one SharePoint, I would call it technical analyst, to do that. And we've done that without writing custom code, right? Without writing SharePoint solution packages and features. We've done it all with I don't even think we use SharePoint Designer. It's all done with XSLT. Okay. So in terms of customizing further, the automatic translation can be done using, like I said, either Google Translate or Microsoft Bing Translator. The translation widget, if you go to microsofttranslator.com/widget, it's an embeddable HTML widget that you can include on your page. And all of the translation toolbars and the drop-downs, everything I've shown you here is actually part of that HTML widget that they provide you. So as far as integrating the level of effort to integrating this capability, I will compare that to very similar to integrating Google Analytics, which is basically it's a JavaScript file that you have to include and the HTML snippet. And in this particular case, we decided to do that in our page layouts for all of our news content. So that's just something that you have to integrate into a page layout design. And finally, we have also recommended that typically if you want document preview, there's really two options. The SharePoint Fast Search for SharePoint, in about, I believe 2007, Microsoft acquired FAST. And FAST is effectively an enterprise search vendor based out of, I forgot the actual country. I think it's either Belgium or it's one of the northern European countries. But it's a enterprise search technology, and over the past, I would say 3 years, Microsoft effectively took that search technology and created a simpler, natively, a more better integrated version specifically for SharePoint. Now, one often confusion we see within a lot of customers looking at search is that there's what they call the FAST platform, which is what they call the ESP platform, the enterprise search platform. That is a separate product, right, from the SharePoint Fast Search for SharePoint Server 2010. The Fast Search Server for SharePoint 2010 is, I call it a simplified version of Fast ESP. Its licensing cost is much actually less than the ESP platform. ESP platforms, because it's massive scalability, there's a lot of advanced controls you can have within that platform, but it's also cost upwards of $1 million for that search technology. However, the Fast Search for SharePoint is probably going to cost you somewhere between $10,000 to $20,000, depending on your enterprise license, and the number of servers you want to deploy. But we've seen that most, in terms of cost of licensing for SharePoint Fast for SharePoint, it's about roughly between $10,000 to $20,000. So it's not super expensive. What it adds is a couple of capabilities. Number one is, like I said, it adds document preview, but it has some limitations. First of all, it does not support PDF and some of the other, I would say, non-Microsoft formats. And also, it does not support claim-based authentication. What that means is, within SharePoint, you have two ways to authenticate your users. You can either go, your traditional basic authentication, or you can use Windows claims-based authentication. There's actually an outstanding bug within Fast Search that if you're using claim-based authentication, the crawler is not able to crawl the document content repositories effectively to generate the document preview. So if you want document preview and you're using claim-based authentication and you want the PDF support, another option is the Ontoloca Surf Rate product, which gives you actually a wider breadth of document content support for specifically, and that's the Survey product is specifically for enhancing search and providing document preview. If you're looking at using FAST for SharePoint, in addition to document preview, it has a lot more other capabilities. One example is that you can do multi-level refinement. So what I've shown you here, where we can do, for example, drill by a certain business process, so by industry. I want to be able to find the claim document in this type of insurance product, drilling into a different type of, let it be a claims policy, underwriting guideline. That multiple level refinement is not available out of box from SharePoint. You have to purchase FAST in order to get that multi-hierarchical search refinement. So those are some of the additional capabilities FAST brings, but the Ontoloca Survey product, I believe, do not enhance your search refinement. It only gives you a preview. So there's a lot of trade-offs you have to make if you want to kind of get to that more advanced search optimization capabilities. So at this point, I want to just recap. I have a quick recap of what we have shown here. First of all is, what is the vision for the portal? We propose one vision, one way to think about as you're embarking upon your new design for a portal, is to make it as efficiently as any of the websites that your folks use every day, right? So really look to public-facing websites like CNN or Amazon as you're designing your portal, because they are very efficient and very comfortable. They have gotten very good at organizing large volumes of information. So you want to really learn from that design and incorporate those best practices into a portal. Some of the guiding principles that we presented is, number one is to make finding things really, really fast. To be able to personalize your search experience so that relevant content is delivered. And most importantly, just remember that the portal itself should sort of melt away into a background. We want to really highlight the content that is delivered by the portal itself. So it's not about the portal, it's about the content. And finally, as you're starting your search design or thinking about how do I structure my enterprise search, some of the best practices in findability is using SharePoint-based metadata to drive your search navigation. Customize your search results so that it's very easily scannable by the end users. Use faster navigation, so you have to invest some energy into designing for your business taxonomy so that you can provide additional search refinement. Want to customize the people search, so there's a very fast way to find the employees. And just additional comment about people search. We've seen a lot of third-party systems, tools, or HR systems integrating into intranet. So, for example, Metaphor is a very popular HRMS system, and or SAP, right, or Oracle HR solutions. They all have some sort of people data in them. So, one way to do that is to write a custom web part so that you can teach, using, let it be business data connector within SharePoint, or write a custom web part that can interrogate those databases for the people information. That approach will work in the short term, but we believe that the best way to implement people directory is through the people search. So avoid directly going to the external data sources. A better architecture is actually using the search crawler, bring that data into the SharePoint environment, and then execute search against it. And this has to do with really decoupling your people data sources from the search experience. And this is very similar to our next point, which is how do you deliver fresh content to your end users. By using search as the core sort of data retrieval platform, you're decoupling the schema and also all the complexity from your data sources and flattening that into a very powerful search tool that is optimized for retrieval. So one classic example is that if you misspell someone's last name, the search engine can automatically correct that based on other people's search experience. And that's not something that you want to build yourself, right? You really want to use the keyword correction capability from within the search engine, as opposed to try to do something within your own web part. So we believe that search can actually power a number of use cases within most intranets. And I hope that, the takeaway here is that as you're designing your information architecture, don't forget the search capability. It can actually power the majority of our navigation within your portal environment. So this concludes our third webinar in terms of, best practices in intranet search and findability. And in, I would say, within 6 weeks, we will deliver the final strategy series webinar, which is called High Performance SharePoint. Over the past, 5 to 6 years, we've seen an explosion of SharePoint implementations, and most of the clients actually call us have some sort of SharePoint farm already that they're either currently managing, or they're using some sort of managed services partner like Rackspace or FrontWeb that is managing their farm. One of the biggest issues we see in the field is just that the SharePoint performance is relatively poor, especially in remote branch offices, or if you have folks that scatter around these little branch offices that may or may not have high connectivity. One of the most common complaints is that SharePoint is really, really slow, or our intranet is really, really slow. So what we really want to address is what makes SharePoint fast. As a platform, SharePoint can do everything to make your intranet run as fast as any publicly available intranet site. It can compete with Google's of the world or Yahoo portals of the world. However, that takes some disciplined engineering practices, and we're going to cover those in detail in the next part of our webinar series.